Pedro Vallenilla is the CEO and co-founder of Cashea, Venezuela's pioneering buy now, pay later platform. Launched in 2022, Cashea has rapidly become a cornerstone of the country's financial landscape, offering interest-free installment payments to over 7 million users across more than 5,000 affiliated merchants in 25 cities. Today, Cashia remarkably facilitates transactions amounting to approximately 3% of Venezuela's GDP. In this episode, Pedro shares his journey to starting Cashea, the importance and value of bringing on the right advisors early, why product placement was essential to Cashea's growth, a glimpse into the company's product roadmap, and much more. Pedro, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Amazing to be here with you, having the opportunity.
No, I have been a fan from afar. I've heard some great things about you, not only from Cashea, but for you as a person. So can't wait to get into Cashea. But before then, it would be wonderful to learn about a little bit about your upbringing, what inspired you early on. Did you have any passions? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, going a bit back, baby family. I was brought up in a family that business was a thing. My father, my grandparents, my uncles, and early in life, I didn't know what my passion will be or what would I be good at, and potentially could I be successful in business as they were, and that pressure started building up. And when I got to college, that's when it really the pressure continued to build up. And in that moment in time, I already been an entrepreneur. So I've sold a drum set that I had, bought things from Mercado Libre, and that's the way I overall maintain it. But that overall curiosity, because of my upbringing, me trying to figure out what I was good in life, was like it's a bug, and it's something that it was like from very early on.
And I have a question because I think, growing up in a family where there's multiple entrepreneurs, potentially your father, uncles, close friends, and family, do you think it's a double-edged sword where you see what greatness could be, but also like there's this pressure, right? And maybe self-induced. Was that the case for you?
100%. And at the end, I remember going through therapy, and they were asking me, and I don't know, I had the blessing of having my grandparents' names. So from both sides, and both and at the end I was Pedro Julio, and Pedro from my father and Julio from my mother, and they were amazing businessmen. And my mother always told me, this is the best name that I could have ever given you. And it's like, mom, no. And it was like, I really struggled early on. So I really struggled to get my footing, to really understand if I could generate some value. That it was like a really high bar, and it's like, well, I've been given this privilege to learning from them, but am I gonna be able to follow those footsteps? Am I gonna be able to execute like them? Am I gonna fail? And it's like early on, it was like, yeah, thank you, but not so thanks. So it was like, yeah.
Everybody goes through it. Maybe these
Hmm.
entrepreneurs are really tough. But you mentioned you had the bug, the entrepreneurial bug, but there was a few endeavors you started before Cashea. Do you want to share a little bit about what they were and then eventually how that inspired you to get to Cashea?
The first thing is, as I started struggling in school, so my father passed away almost 12, 14 years ago, sorry. And in a way, the best decision he made, or the best decision on my upbringing, was cutting me off, saying, hey, if you don't want to go to college, if you don't want to go to, are not going to do good in grades and good in school, so you need to, yeah, you need to figure it out. And as my sisters were in this path, or this happy path, I was in this, yeah. And in that moment in time, I started tinkering. I started trying to understand how I could make ends meet. And what I started doing was buying things from my friends and selling them for through Mercado Libre, and that started to be successful and start to earn money to, yeah, to cover my bills. And but I appreciate that moment in life, because my dad just, hey, take responsibility. And this was my side gig as I was struggling through college, and but I wanted to really build something. And in that process, I decided to join extracurricular in college, and decided to go and represent my university in Taiwan for a model MUN, and I hated every day of that process, getting ready to get there. I am doing this because if not, I'm going to be kicked out of my house. I'm already being cut off. I don't want to be kicked out of my house. I don't want to be homeless. I am already cash poor. I don't want to be homeless. And in that trip, and I struggled every day until I got to that. I was in San Francisco and bumped into Groupon into just as soon as I got into the plane, I bought this magazine, and page number 4, I start reading about Groupon, and this is a 10-hour flight to Taipei. Yeah, and I was like, I fell in love with the concept. I saw this was a great opportunity potentially to do this in Venezuela. Loved my e-commerce, or I was getting in love with the e-commerce because of Mercado Libre, and said, hey, this is a great thing that we could potentially do. And as I was flying into Taipei, I said, hey, as soon as I get back, I'm going to do this. I spent that week in Taipei, didn't do anything about the coursework that I should have been doing, but reading about this company. I went back to Venezuela, told my dad that I was going to drop out of school and that I was going to launch this business. And he said, in that moment in time, I thought, I'm going to kick you out of the house. But he basically told me was, Pedro, if you're so decided that this is what you want to do, I'm going to support you. I'll try to bring some investors in. Let's try to make this work. At the end, he told me a year later from that he just wanted to be supportive, and because he knew that I could potentially fail.
Were you
But
surprised by that response by him?
100%. But what happened was that 48 hours later, after we launched, we have sold $100,000 in GMV, and we
And he
became.
thought there's no way this was going to happen. He was looking at you like,
Yeah,
whoa,
yeah. He was like, "Whoa, okay, now let's get into this."
is this fraud?
We became the biggest
Wow.
startup to have ever been launched in Venezuela. And I was 21 years old at the time. And yeah, at the end, this was supposed to be a life learning experience of failure. And it became a huge success.
Right. Wow. So that was the first basically successful endeavor you launched, right?
And then it followed, but followed with many failures. 21 years old at the time, you can imagine that you could, yeah, you know everything. Okay, I dropped out of college, went against my dad. This is working amazing. We're doing a lot of money. We're growing very fast. We have become the biggest startup that has ever been launched in Venezuela. And it's like all these things start to happen, and what could potentially go wrong, right? And I start tinkering with startup number 2. It failed. Launched startup number 3, failed. Startup number 4 failed. And what I loved through that process was it wasn't an easy as and straightforward as I initially thought it would be. And in that moment in time as well, my dad passed away. And it's like, it's not only, I believe in a way, God or my dad just prepared me to have this opportunity to understand how to run a business. What I fell in love with internet, with startups, but basically, yeah, I don't know, a shot of humility, a reality with the failures that followed my successful initial start.
I was going to ask, and you could probably cover a whole episode just on lessons learned. But when you think of the first success and
Todo eso cuento, yeah.
you thought you knew a lot. You probably knew less than you thought. But was there a takeaway from the other 2 or 3 failures that you said, hey, I'm going to do this differently with Cashea?
Yeah, many. If it's one takeaway, was that the investors that you choose early on and the team and your co-founders is the most important thing of all. And for me, when we decided to launch Cashea, and there's a backstory and why I ended up with Cashea, because startup number 4, I pivoted and then moved to Santiago, Chile. That company grew. That startup, after failing 2 or 3 in the middle, that became a company. And I decided to pivot to full service restaurants just before COVID. That company was going amazing, but COVID hits and I'm bankrupt in that moment in time. I feel as a failure to my wife and kids. Credit cards started calling me. That company, yeah, went to flames, and I failed again. And I said, I can't believe that after moving to Santiago, Chile from Venezuela, after growing this company in 8 countries, I decided to go after an industry that is the most affected after COVID. In that moment in time, it's God again is punishing me, and I don't know why. I do not know why, but I really understand that I need to get a job. There's no way I can continue through this madness. And as credit cards started calling me, the only job that I was offered back was on a credit card collection agency. So they were calling me in the morning to collect for me, and I was interviewing with them in the afternoon. And this was a startup that just raised a Series A, and
You
at the
knew that
end,
you could work there, get paid, and settle the waves, settle the boat. Wow.
they didn't know I was in debt.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I was doing that without their knowledge. But yeah, at the end, I fell in love with consumer credit, and I told my wife that I would never venture again. But now here I am.
That was just a small little white lie. But there's like there's a very famous, like I guess well-known founder investor in the US called Naval, and he always talks about some of the best founders are able to always start over again. Like there's this thing where if you're always willing to go back to zero, you're going to do something amazing, and you've done this like many times. And I'm so impressed because it just keeps showing your resilience, and that's just pretty remarkable. So you joined the credit, I guess, collection company, and then that inspires you ultimately with this concept of buy now, pay later, correct?
Basically, what happened was I was there. I was really happy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about how to pay wages or how to run payroll. It was like hey, I'm being a very thoughtful and considerate dad to my kids. I'm being a considerate husband to my wife. She has been along all the way. Okay, so she was my girlfriend when I was struggling at school, and she went from there all the way to two kids. And in that moment in time, I said, hey, I'm going to stay here. I'll continue to learn. There's so much that I need to learn. I learned a lot from Collectia, but one of my early investors calls me out and tells me, and this was one of my failed startups, and tells me, Pedro, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm working in this company. Yeah, this is amazing. I failed Jessica. Yeah, I'm happy. Conversation number two, he gets, okay, let's talk about your learnings. What has happened? Why did you believe you failed? Why? And basically in call number three, after we end up call number three, he tells me, Pedro, I believe you have the right scars. If you ever want to venture again, I'm gonna be your first check. Call me.
Probably the worst thing you could hear, and your wife never wanted to hear from this guy. If you told her about this at the time, I'm sure you have. She's like, why did you pick up?
No, she was so pissed. She basically told me in Spanish. Said we had this conversation. We started having this conversation. It took like a 60 days for me to finish making my decision. But in day number 60, I don't know, it's 2 months in, I say, Jessica, I'm gonna make this decision. I'm gonna leave my job. I'm gonna start this startup. It's going to call. I'm gonna do this today. And she basically says, "No inventes, like do not do this." And our little one that is walking by and says, Papa, no inventes. Papa, do not do this. And at the end, in that moment in time, Jessica and I knew that I needed to execute, that I needed to quit my job, and she has been supportive ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. That's just, in some ways, it's serendipitous, where as much as she knows maybe it's not what she wants, she knows that it's going to burn. It's like burning in there. You know that you're ready for more. So the fact that she's so supportive is a testament to her and your guys' relationship. Amazing.
It's impossible
Amazing.
without them.
Yeah.
At the end, people talk a lot about the resilience on founders, but once you're married, it's the resilience of your partner that walk you through the ups and downs. And at the end, I lost all the belief that I could potentially do this. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna do this successfully. I've lost all belief that I'm able to execute. I failed and I will never do this again. And at the end, she had this strong belief in me that said, okay, if this is it again, let's do this, and I'm gonna be supportive. And at the end, is her resilience and her walking beside me that has made the difference. And yeah, I'm so blessed.
Truly inspiring, honestly, Pedro. There was a part there where I started like feeling these goosebumps. I'm like, this is crazy, but this is real. So, Cashea, give me the kind of story of what it is and why it's so important to Venezuela, and then we can kind of get in the product and so forth.
Yeah, 100%. Basically, in Venezuela, after hyperinflation, credit ceased to exist. Imagine a country. Venezuela was one of the most interesting, booming economies in the 20th century in Latin America, a long-standing democracy, a country that had been doing amazing. And after 2020, we've been having very difficult years. In 2017, hyperinflation hits and credit ceased to exist. So imagine a country that was completely wiped out. Credit ceased to exist, and Venezuelans had no access to credit whatsoever. So if you got one of the biggest economies, the biggest oil reserves country in the world, oil rich country, that because of poor management, you basically the banking system collapsed, the credit system collapsed, and we were starting from zero. But things started changing, and one of the things that changed was Venezuela effectively dollarized, and after that, a company called Yummy uh, that went through Y Combinator launched this ride hailing and raised money to launch this startup. A big sum of venture money that was raised, and it's like this is the perfect timing for us to do something in Venezuela. And I told this investor, okay, I'm gonna take your money, but we're gonna be relaunching consumer credit in Venezuela. Cashea is a buy now, pay later. And basically, what we have done is we have relaunched consumer credit in Venezuela. As of today, we're doing over 2.5% of GDP. Venezuela's GDP goes through Cashea. Over 35% of adult population in Venezuela has Cashea in their pocket. We have become the biggest financial institution, consumer facing in our country. And we're doing over 1.3 buy now, pay later credits per second.
Per
And
second.
per second, per second.
Wow. When you hear about product market fit, I think that defines it in some ways. But
That's a great
yeah,
definition.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. I think if you talk about something that actually has product market fit, this is it. Explain to me. From what I understood at first, it was like a little bit of like you thought you'd launch because I've researched you, I've watched a few interviews, and you thought it would just happen, but there was a little bit of a disconnect at first, right? So maybe take me through. You launch. How did you get your first couple merchants? And then there's the merchants, and then there's also the consumers.
Yeah, remember that when I launched my first company, I was at 21 years old, and we did $100,000 in GMB in the first 48 hours. So Venezuela, there's no credit. People are gonna flock to this. This is gonna be an instant hit. And on the contrary, first day zero, second week zero. We start paying people just to get into that for us to really understand if this potentially could work. And yeah, we had messed up our go-to-market and the way we designed our initial strategy. And I call an advisor of mine that today runs an amazing CEO of an amazing public company in the US. And he tells me, Pedro, what are you doing? You're supposed to be doing amazing. You're offering zero interest loans in a country where credit does not exist. You're booming, right? And I'm no, it's nothing's happening. And he tells me, you're gonna stop everything that you're doing. You're gonna call me right away, and you're gonna explain to me how are you launching this product, and explain that I'm doing this through performance marketing, that we've got some downloads, but people are not getting into debt. They're not using their credit lines. And he tells me, okay, you got it all wrong. You have to be in that moment of purchase. Okay, this is supposed to be used at stores, and you need to influence when the customer has the need. And for me was yeah, on the checkout. Now I explain this, and it's obvious.
It
Okay,
seems obvious, but at the time,
of
it's not
course,
that
yeah.
clear, right?
I don't know. At the end, Ramon came from Rappi. Okay, one of my co-founders. I came from Tu Escuentón, so we hadn't done real offline marketing. And hey, this is the way we know how to do it. So he tells me, you're gonna do that, your actual strategy, 10%, and we're gonna change your strategy 90%. We're gonna do it this way. Are you willing to make the change? And of course, I'm willing. Yeah. And we did $10,000 that month. As we started changing the strategy, it started working. Then we did 35,000 or 25,000. The month after that, we did 400,000. A year later from then, we did 40 million. And it's like sometimes having the right people on board, having advice, having these conversations, being vulnerable and saying, hey, I've completely messed up. We don't know what we're doing. I don't know why it's not working. But sometimes having conversations, this will help you out. And that's one of the many moments in life where an advisor has made a difference. And he owns zero equity in Cashia, zero options. So I owe him for life. It's the worst. We've got advisors with advisory shares, and he's not an advisor, and he's like, yeah.
Just kidding. But yeah. But that shows you also, though, that one little advice, you took it, you had the humility to say, okay, we're going to go to the merchants at checkout and say, hey, do you want to have this option? But it's all placement, right? It seems obvious, but at the time you're not thinking that way, right?
100%. And now what we have been building is that We do believe that the biggest shift for us to move from offline to online is to understand how people buy. If you understand how people buy, and in Latam, over 93% of purchases are being done offline. If you build trust there, and you build trust through credit, okay, and that's the way we have been doing it, and then you show them a better way how to buy, okay, that's the biggest shift from offline to online that you could ever do in Latam. Because at the end, what really happens is people are asking to buy online and to build that trust, okay, but if you're willing to understand and be humble enough to understand how they buy, let's build trust, and then let's show them a better way how to buy. That's the biggest shift from offline to online that can be done in Latam, and that's the way we're addressing that, and that's the way we have been able to get over 7.3 million users.
Gotcha. And do you find that acquiring merchants has been more straightforward, or was there a little bit of a hurdle there as well?
So we were very cash poor. So this company, when I decided to launch this company, this is a Venezuelan company. This is Venezuelan market. And we launched this company in 2022. In January 2020, still 2021. Still, people are doing amazing investments. So if the founder makes sense, if the team makes sense, potentially you will be able to raise money. Come March 2022, and you got this I don't know, this apocalypse, this what happened in venture is now you're a Venezuelan trying to launch a fintech, and there's no investments whatsoever anywhere in the world, but much less for Venezuela. So when we did finally ended launching, we had so little money, and but what did work, and a decision we made very early on, and that was a right decision, was where we're going to focus. We're not going to be launching Venezuela. We're not going to be launching Caracas. We're not even going to be launching a specific zone. We were launching in one shopping mall, and we were going to win one shopping mall at a time. And that was our network. That was their first atomic network, and there was like, we want to build this amazing experience in this main shopping mall in the country. And if we're able to do this here, we will figure it out. And people didn't jump into it at first, but after that amazing December, we've been growing, have over 5,000 merchants as of today, 25 cities, and over a 15,000 strong wait list ready to be onboarded. But initially, a lot of no's, a lot of skeptics, a lot of this will never work out. Yeah.
One thing on the consumer payment side, because I've read some articles, the default rates are sub 2%. And then we can get to one question about product roadmap. How have you guys maintained this credit worthiness underwriting to maintain default rates below 2%? Anywhere is impressive, but let alone in a country where there's limited credit and in Venezuela. What do you think has been the one or two key points?
At the end, we do believe that non-performance correlates perfectly on the quality of the product. If we would build an amazing product, this would be the last thing Venezuelans will ever not pay. It's like how to build this amazing network of amazing merchants. And the first thing is, okay, let's build this amazing network. Okay, let's make it almost impossible for a user to really believe that, hey, if there's this amazing network at my disposal, am I gonna lose?
Yeah, if I can't be on here, on my quality of life is severely less.
And in the other side, trust is a word that is easily thrown out. Okay. But now that we're doing 2.5% of GDP, we can potentially use that word. Is if we could bring trust back to Venezuelans and say, we do believe in you. We do believe that there's credit can be rebuilt in this country with little or no data at first. And we've been able to continue to develop this underwriting. At first, it was over 7% of non-performance, and has gone down all the way to 2%. But people at first told us, hey, there's no way Venezuelans are going to pay. There's no way they're going to understand how to use credit. And what I've learned after working in collections is the Venezuelans are the best payers in Latam. So we're the most responsible. And at the end, they've nourished this opportunity and they take care of it because they understand it. We as Venezuelans understand credit as an asset, and we nourish it so much because we understand what happens when we lose it. And this country lived without consumer credit for 7, 8 years. And once it's come back, and it has come back through Cashea, they nourish it, they take care of it, they are proud of it. And there was an investor that told us, and this is not our words, but it's his. It's, hey guys, as I continue to learn more about you guys and due diligence, you have built this national treasure brand. And Cashea is potentially right now one of the most beloved brands, not the most beloved financial institution brand, but one of the most beloved brands in Venezuela. And we're very proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've made an impact on millions of people's lives, which is it's remarkable. It can be overwhelming in some ways, right? I'm sure consumers have given feedback about other products they want. I'm sure you guys have whiteboarded many things. What do you think's potentially in the future for Cashea for other financial services when it comes to credit for consumers? Have you thought about that?
Yeah. We have built, at first we did 42-day installments. So this was the perfect product for maybe a cell phone, maybe a pair of glasses, or maybe I needed to buy a tire for my motorcycle. But then we understood that we wanted to become that way how Venezuelans buy and pay for things. And this vision of becoming this finance and commerce super app for Venezuelans. Okay. It's not only just revolutionizing finance, but revolutionizing commerce as well. And now Cashea is heavily used on a day-to-day basis. So at first we understood active users as somebody who would potentially use that Cashea every 90 days. Now we understand Cashea as a way for you to use on your everyday life. And we have become the payment, the way how Venezuelans make payments. And this has become our bread and butter. And we will continue developing products as regulation comes along for us to do it successfully. But we will continue deepening financial products for Venezuelans and try to revolutionize commerce as well, and do investments and potential M&As for us to continue to work it.
Of course. Awesome. Last questions here, Pedro, and then we're good on my end. You have a lot to be proud of, but what are you most proud of so far in Cashea's journey?
Impact. The way how credit can potentially and has changed lives. The stories of our users and what they've been able to do through this. At the end, just rebuilding trust in a country where trust was lost, and doing that through credit. It's just we're humbled every day that we have the opportunity to do this, and at the end it's a huge responsibility. So at the end, yes, we're very proud, but at the end we do believe that this as a responsibility where we need to work a lot to continue to execute on that vision, and to try to maintain that trust that we have been built, because trust it takes years for you to build trust. It's very easy to lose it, and at the end for us is we head down. We need to continue working. We haven't won yet. There's 99% of the vision that continues to need to be executed, and there's so much work ahead of us. So at the end, do not get too starstruck about what has happened, and understand that you could be nominated as a startup of the year or the most impactful company in the country, but at the end this is something that that's amazing, that's great, but back to work. And that's the only way that we see moving forward that this could potentially work.
No, it's so impressive, Pedro. And in some ways, you're so far into the journey, but also in other ways, you're just starting, which is crazy. There's so many opportunities here. Thanks for making the time, and appreciate everything. And when you're in Mexico City again, let me know.
Let's do that. Un abrazo.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of Cut the Check, presented by VCMX. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and leave a review. It really helps more founders and investors discover the show. You can find me on LinkedIn at MacMeyer, or check out my website at macmeyer.com for more insights on startups, venture capital, and the Latin America ecosystem. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week.